For over 30 years, I have had the opportunity to travel the world and document stories about the healing power of Jesus. I have seen and witnessed things that most wouldn't even believe. The testimony you're about to watch today is one of the most profound displays of Jesus' healing power I have witnessed to date. It is also one that hits very close to home because it's a story about my granddaughter Paisley. Meet Paisley Shackelford, a full-of-life 3-year-old that loves to dance, smile, laugh, and bring joy to anyone she can. She is the daughter of Derek and Emily Shackelford, who met at the age of 9, grew up together, got married, and had 3 children: Brody, Levi, and Paisley. Together, as a family, they placed a huge emphasis on the goodness of God and His faithfulness. What was about to happen was something that no one saw coming, and a test of faith greater than ever before. It all began on the night of April 27th, when Paisley developed a fever at dinner and began feeling sick. Over the next 6 days, Emily and Derek made daily trips to their doctor's office to try to understand why this virus their daughter was fighting had not gotten better, but in fact was getting worse. After 9 days and 6 doctor's visits, Paisley started to become lifeless, and a strong gut feeling had Emily and Derek on their 7th and final trip to the pediatrician's office.
The doctors came in, they listened to her lungs, they checked her oxygen, they looked in her ears, everything checked out. They said, I don't feel like there's anything more we can do for you. Her lungs are clear. The doctor had a second set of doctors come in to confirm what they were not hearing, that it was clear. I was beyond frustrated, and I told Derek, we are putting her in the car and we are going to Arnold Palmer Children's Hospital because I don't believe that she's okay.
We got to Arnold Palmer, they took her in, got her vitals, and I think it was no longer than maybe 15 minutes they were rushing us into a room. It was like such a God thing, because within 30 seconds, the doctor came in and he was cleaning his hands, just talking to us, and the college student came in and listened, and within like 10 seconds he knew.
He put the stethoscope to her lung and he said, it's completely silent. He said, I should be hearing air pass through her lung right now, and it's completely silent. So they immediately ordered a series of chest x-ray tests. By the time we got back to our room, we didn't wait 2 minutes, and the head doctor of the entire ER walked in. I remember like it was yesterday. He was a little bit flustered. He said, I don't want you to panic, but this is probably the most severe case I've ever seen in a child. So much so that he used his personal cell phone to take a screenshot of the actual x-ray film because he wanted to show us how severe it was personally. Essentially what he told us was her entire right lung had completely collapsed. She was full from top to bottom with fluid. She was showing signs of sepsis. He said this did not happen overnight. This has been brewing for a while. He said that there was bacterial infection surrounding her lung, and it was very serious.
And that's when he started talking about, we're going to get in contact with a surgeon, the infectious disease doctor.
She'll be having a chest tube and a drain inserted in her within the next few hours. You'll be admitted in the next few minutes to the special care unit, which is 24-hour round-the-clock care. He said, we are going to start administering the highest dose of Rocephin we can possibly give a child through an IV, because that will start basically attacking the sepsis. Thankfully, it had not made it to her blood yet, so from that, she was not fully septic. So that was a huge blessing in that moment, but it was like a wave of, oh my goodness, what is about to happen to my daughter? Just rushed over us in that moment.
So I remember getting checked in to our room, and I remember them telling us like what's gonna go down. And I remember her telling us, we're gonna put her to sleep. You guys are gonna step away. It's gonna probably take about an hour, and we're gonna do everything here, and we're gonna make an incision in her chest. We're gonna put this tube into her lung, and it's gonna start draining. We had everybody praying. We had worship music playing while we were waiting.
Why?
Just because, I mean, we knew that worship was the only thing that was going to keep us centered, keep us peace.
So
within peace.
one sense of calm in the middle of the storm. Got back to the room. She's got this chest tube coming out of her, and it is currently draining the fluid that's been in her for the past 10 days that we've felt in our spirit was something off. And now to physically see that, it was like, oh my goodness, like the reality actually hit.
And at that point, we knew that this was going to be a journey, like that all this stuff in her lungs were going to have to drain for us to be able to go home.
Every morning they would come in to do follow-up chest x-rays, and every afternoon they'd come give us the results, and we would see like a small improvement, but you could tell that it wasn't fully resolved.
Throughout the entire 8 days we were there, we had different people come and pray, and we had the Bible there. We were taking communion. I do remember when we were standing in prayer when we didn't know, her school, Lakeside, sent us a photo, and it was the coolest photo I've ever seen. It was all the teachers. I remember the class.
Entire school.
The whole school is down this one hallway, and all the classrooms face each other, and everybody was standing in the hallways, teachers, kids, and they all were praying for Paisley. I felt very confident that this was exactly where God had in his timeline for him to show off. And so I knew that something cool was about to happen.
Day 8, when they discharged us, they gave us a very clear picture of, we're going to give you a week, and after a week we're going to want to see you back. Both the pulmonologist and the infectious disease doctor wanted to see her back in a week, and they said based on what happens in that week will determine our course of action from there, because it has not all resolved itself, and she still has that pocket of air, that pneumothorax, and she still has the fluid. At this point, it's either her body does absorb it or we're going to have to intervene a different way. During that week that they were giving us at home, I remember treating her as if she was like a bubble that could easily pop. Like, I didn't want anyone to come over. I didn't want to do anything. Like, it was very much so treating her like a piece of porcelain or glass. And I remember one night at like 11 at night, she started feeling warm. And I was like, no way. Sure enough, she had 102 fever. They had told us if at any time she gets a fever, you have got to bring her back immediately. So I immediately called the on-call doctor, let them know what was happening, and the next day, that next morning, woke up and we ended up back at Arnold Palmer Children's Hospital. She tested positive for COVID-19 and adenovirus simultaneously, both which affect your lungs and both which are viruses that in the state that she's at, they literally told us before we left, like, she does not need to be out anywhere because these things could basically make this thing turn for the worse. And so here we are thinking we have a week to improve all this fluid, and we're on the up and up, and she's doing really well. And 5 days into that week, she's now tested positive for not one, but 2 major respiratory viruses. And we find ourselves back admitted to Arnold Palmer. At that moment, it was as if we were square one again. Very concerned. There was talks of her breathing, and her chest x-rays and everything were coming back standard with what we had already known. So it hadn't worsened, but there was now talks of myocarditis, which is when you have a virus or multiple viruses that end up swelling a muscle in your heart, because she had an elevated heart rate. So at that point, now we were being admitted for possible heart issues on top of lung issues. And I remember Derek, when the doctor walked out of the ER telling us we would be admitted for heart issues, I remember Derek literally saying, if God brought her through this lung issue and takes her out with this heart issue, like it was a fleshly human moment where he was like, are you serious? And honestly, I felt that with every piece of me. I was like, we find ourselves back here after we're approaching what we thought was going to be like this miraculous healing and turnaround. We find ourselves back in the ER with 2 viruses and possible heart issues, and we couldn't even wrap our minds around it at that moment.
I remember having that moment because it was like, the doctor first was like, hey, everything's looking, the COVID and the virus isn't really affecting her lungs, so we don't have anything but, and when he said but, I was like, oh my gosh, what's going on here?
Yeah.
And when he started talking about the heart issue, I was like, you've got to be kidding me.
Yeah, it was just like another beat down moment where you just feel like, oh my goodness, now she's gonna have to deal with this. So they did a bunch of labs, they did EKGs, they came in and hooked her up to all the machines, and everything came back completely clear as far as the heart issue goes. They ruled that out, the cardiologist ruled that out. So they ended up discharging us and basically said, pick back up where you left off with that week that you were given, and we'll see what the scans show at the end of that. So about 4 or 5 days later, we went back for more scans and more labs. She had no longer had either of the viruses, which was like a huge blessing. We saw the infectious disease doctor, and he came in to read the results, and he said, well, there's still fluid there and there's still an air pocket, but you know what, we're gonna give her another week. It was that next appointment that we went back for more scans, and I remember those scans coming back, and it was the first sense of like, we're on the right track. The infectious disease guy had basically said, I think it's still there, but it's improving by a little bit. The next scan we want to order is a CT scan, because we'll be able to see the shadows behind her lungs and actually gauge how much air pocket there is, how big it is. If it's very big, we're going to have to possibly do surgery and take part of the lung. But hopefully that's not the case. From there, we saw the pulmonologist, and we did the CT scan, and we did more scans, and each month we went back, there was slight improvement each time. Come October was our next appointment. We got the CT scan and we got the x-rays, and we had no idea at that point, walking in there, that that would actually be the last time we had to take our daughter to a pulmonologist appointment. We were about 20 minutes into the appointment, and the doctor comes in, and our daughter was running around the room. She was laughing, she was playing, she was blowing up. I remember she was blowing up a glove to be like a hand, and thought it was the funniest thing ever, which reverse 5 months, they told her she's not to blow up balloons, she's not to do all these restrictions that had to do with her lungs. And the doctor came in and pulled up her original x-ray and pulled up that day's scan and said, it's as if this has never happened. She is 100% healed. She can go back to full activity, flying, swimming, the whole 9 yards. She can be a normal 3-year-old again. And they said, we don't need to see you back unless you have any further issues. And to this day, she has not had one single issue. She's a thriving 4-year-old. She is an absolute joy, and everything in her life would never point to the fact that 6 months prior, she had been knocking on death's door, and God brought her through this miraculous healing. This
story of being real and having faith is going to be the story that sets somebody free, that's going to change somebody's mindset on God.
This story, years from now, can affect lives of people who are going to watch this, and when they're going through problems where they have a lack of faith, they can understand that the foundations never waver, even though your mindset or your human instinct might be to question or doubt. The innate ability to have that relationship and pull it up out of you when needed most is still remains. And so I feel like we had to go through what we had to go through, and Paisley had to go through what Paisley had to go through, so that generations from now can see God is a healer. He is good. He is faithful. His word remains true. His promises never fail.
I remember after we got the final word, the day that the doctor was like, that didn't take a year. Like, you're healed. I remember it was like a Friday, and I remember we had church that Sunday, and I remember like being overly excited to share the testimony in small detail. I remember we played Waymaker, and like that song hit completely different, and Pay was there worshiping. And I remember seeing her, like, I think Tot had her, and she was dancing with Pay to that song, and it was just like, yeah, he did it. And it was like, it's the song. I mean, Waymaker, he's a miracle worker, he's a promise keeper, and he's light in the darkness. And I think, we saw that every piece of that throughout the whole journey. And I think, whether Pay knows the words that she's singing or not, words still have power. And she
sang that every day over herself.
Woke her spirit up to exactly what she needed to be healed and to be a walking testimony.
Working in this place, I worship you. I worship you. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God. That is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God.